The first thing Zara Adeyemi learned about beauty was that she didn't have any. Not because it was true, but because Delilah said so. And for the first 16 years of Zara's life, Delilah's word was law, gospel, and the last sentence of every argument. Zara was 7, the first time she really stood in front of a mirror and felt something. She couldn't name it then, that quiet, private pleasure of recognizing yourself. She'd just been standing in the bathroom before school, looking at the way her uniform sat on her small shoulders, the way her eyes were large and dark and framed by lashes that curled without any help. She wasn't being vain, she was just looking, the way children do when the world is still new enough to include themselves. Her mother passed the doorway and stopped. "You're staring at yourself again." Delilah leaned against the frame, arms folded, head tilted. Not angry, almost amused, which was somehow worse. "What exactly are you looking at?" Zara turned around. "Nothing, Mommy." "Good," Delilah said, already walking away. "Because there's nothing to see." She said it the way you'd say the sky is blue or dinner is ready, like it was just a fact of the world. Zara stood alone in the bathroom for another moment, then looked back at the mirror, slower this time, uncertain now, like she was checking to see if something had changed in the last 10 seconds. It hadn't, but something else had. Here is what Zara knew about her father, compiled over years of careful listening and strategic silence. His name was never said out loud. He was older, much older, and when 16-year-old Delilah had shown up with news of a pregnancy, he had left. Not slowly, not with guilt or hesitation, he had simply gone, vanished, moved through the door and kept moving, presumably until he reached a place where nobody knew his name or his business. Delilah never cried about it, at least not where anyone could see. What she did instead was carry it, in her jaw, which was always slightly tight, in her eyes, which could go cold and flat the way a sky goes flat before rain, in the way she looked at Zara sometimes, not with hatred exactly, but with something adjacent to it, something exhausted and resentful and sad all at once, like a woman looking at a debt she hadn't agreed to take on but couldn't get rid of. "You know why he left?" Delilah said one evening. Zara was 9. She was sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework, and the question came out of nowhere, casual, like her mother was commenting on the weather. "Because of you. I told him I was pregnant, and that was the last time I saw him." Zara looked up from her notebook. She didn't know what to say. She was 9. "Okay, Mommy," she said quietly, and looked back down at her work. She got 2 sums wrong that night, which had never happened before. She didn't tell anyone why. The hair happened when Zara was 8. She'd been growing it out. It was past her ears now, soft and thick and coiled tightly, the kind of hair that had a personality of its own. One of the women at church had plaited it for her the week before, and Zara had spent every morning since then standing at the mirror carefully, not wanting to disturb it. She came home from school on a Thursday to find her mother standing in the bathroom with a razor and the look of someone who had made a decision. "Come here." "Mommy, what?" "I said come here, Zara." She sat on the little stool they kept by the sink, and she heard her mother's hands in her hair. Not gentle, not rough, just purposeful. And then she heard the sound, the slow, deliberate sound of the razor. "You don't need all this hair," Delilah said, walking her way across her head in long, even strokes. "You're already too much as it is." The coils fell around the bathroom floor in soft, dark clusters. Zara watched them in the mirror. She kept her back straight and her hands folded in her lap because she had learned somehow, without being told, that stillness was the safest response to her mother's decisions. She didn't cry. She wanted to. The feeling was there, sitting heavy in her chest, pressing up behind her eyes. But she blinked it back down and watched her reflection slowly change, watched the girl in the mirror become unfamiliar, and she decided at 8 years old that she didn't need the mirror anyway. She stopped looking for a long time after that. Here is the other thing about Delilah Adeyemi. The thing that made everything more complicated. She was fine. Not fine as in she was okay or she was managing. Fine as in the woman was put together, beautifully, infuriatingly, meticulously put together. She had the kind of figure that made other women do quiet, miserable mathematics in their heads. She never married, never had another child, and had spent the years since Zara's birth maintaining herself with the discipline of someone who had decided that her body was the one thing in her life she could actually control. She wore her clothes well, she kept her skin clear, she walked into rooms with a certain kind of authority that had nothing to do with loudness and everything to do with presence. Zara used to watch her sometimes, the way she got ready in the mornings, the way she examined herself in the mirror with cool professional satisfaction, and feel something complicated stir in her chest. Pride, maybe, the specific strange pride of loving someone that doesn't love you back the same way. Or maybe just longing, the longing of a daughter who wanted more than most things to be looked at by her mother the way her mother looked at herself. It never happened, or at least not the way Zara needed. School was the first place Zara could breathe. 6 hours, 5 days a week in a building where nobody looked at her like she was a mistake. Her teachers liked her. She was quiet and attentive, and she asked good questions, the kind that made teachers pause and actually think before answering. Her classmates found her easy to be around. There was a girl called Temi who sat next to her in primary 5 and once said, completely unprompted, "Zara, you're actually so pretty. Why do you always look like you're trying to disappear?" Zara had blinked. "I'm not." "You are," Temi said cheerfully, and then moved on to complaining about their mathematics teacher, completely unaware that she just handed Zara something she would carry quietly for years. In primary 4, a teacher named Mrs. Okafor had told her she had a face that made you want to know her story. Zara had gone home that afternoon and shared it with her mother, holding the compliment carefully, the way you carry something you are afraid to drop. Delilah had looked up from her phone, looked at Zara, and said, "Mrs. Okafor needs glasses." Then she went back to her phone. Zara went to her room and sat on the edge of her bed for a while. She wasn't devastated. She was past the age of devastation by then, which is a sad thing to say about a 10-year-old. She was just tired, quietly, deeply tired, the way children become tired when they've been trying for something for a long time and the trying never seems to land. She took out her homework and did it carefully, because school was hers and she protected it. It was Grandma Chisum who saved her. Not all at once, not dramatically. Grandmothers rarely save you that way. It happened slowly, the way water shapes stone. A phone call every Sunday evening, money folded into her palm during visits, pressed there with both hands and a look that said, "This is between us." Showing up to school events when Delilah forgot, which was often, sitting in the plastic chairs in the front row and clapping loudest of everyone. "Your mother loves you," Grandma Chisum told her once, when Zara was 13 and had come to spend the school holiday at her house. They were in the kitchen shelling beans, and Zara had been quiet for most of the afternoon. Zara didn't respond. "She does," Grandma Chisum said again, softer. "She just loves you from a broken place, and that's not your fault. You hear me? That is not your fault." Zara shelled beans for another minute. "Does it matter?" she asked carefully. "If the love feels the same as not being loved?" Grandma Chisum was quiet for a long time after that. Then she put her hand over Zara's and held it there. She didn't have an answer, but she didn't take her hand away either. And sometimes at 13, that is enough. When Zara got into university, Delilah's response was to list everything it would cost and explain very reasonably that she couldn't be expected to fund it. She had not gone to university herself, and here she looked at Zara with an expression that needed no words, because she'd had responsibilities, a child, things to manage. "I'm not asking you to pay," Zara said. She was 17, and somewhere in the last few years, she had learned to keep her voice very level in these conversations. Grandma said she will. Delilah's jaw tightened. Of course she did. Grandma Chisum handled everything: fees, accommodation, a small monthly allowance that Zara stretched carefully. Before Zara left, her grandmother sat across from her at the kitchen table and held both her hands. You go and become. That's all I want. You go and become whoever you are. Zara cried then, properly, with no attempt to stop it, which surprised her. She hadn't cried in years. University arrived and it was a lot. Not bad, just a lot. Noise and people and freedom, which sounds wonderful and mostly was, except that freedom, when you've never had it, can feel like being set down in the middle of a wide field with no map and told to find your own way home. Zara spent the first semester watching, taking everything in, learning the rules of a world where nobody already had a story about who she was. She watched the other girls, the way they moved through campus with a specific kind of ease, hair done, nails done, outfits considered and coordinated and worn, not just put on. She wasn't jealous. It was more like watching people enjoy a meal she'd been told didn't exist. So this is what it looks like, she thought, deciding that you are worth the effort. She thought about her mother's razor, the hair on the bathroom floor. You don't need all this hair. She thought about the party. She doesn't look that good. She let her hair grow. It was a small decision. She didn't announce it. She just stopped cutting it, started caring for it, watched late-night YouTube tutorials with her headphones in and her roommate asleep. She learned what her hair needed, which turned out to be mainly patience and the belief that it was worth waiting for. By second year, her coils were past her ears. By third year, they were brushing her shoulders, thick and dark and full of the personality she'd spent years trying to suppress. She stood in front of the small mirror in her campus room and looked at herself for the first time in a long time. Really looked, not checking, not criticizing, just looking, the way she had at 7 before she learned to be afraid of what she might see. The girl in the mirror looked back. She looked, Zara thought, like someone. Grandma Chisum's family get-together fell on a long weekend near the end of Zara's final year. She arrived in a yellow dress she'd bought for 3 months of careful saving, her hair out, her edges laid with the concentration of someone who had practiced this and was proud of it. The aunties found her within minutes. Zara, see this girl, oh. My God, when did you become this beautiful? Hey, the hair. You should always wear your hair like this. It suits you so well. She was laughing, being passed from auntie to auntie like a good story. And for a moment, she let herself just receive it, without bracing, without waiting for the other shoe. And then from across the room, she doesn't look that good. Delilah, holding a glass of juice, smiled pleasantly at the nearest auntie, as if she'd simply offered a light correction to someone's mildly inaccurate observation. Not cruel, just factual, just a mother at a party, keeping things accurate. The aunt who was in mid-compliment stuttered slightly and found somewhere else to look. Zara's smile stayed on her face. She had learned over years to keep it there. She picked up a small chin-chin of chin from the table beside her and ate it, and let the noise of the party fill the space her mother's words had tried to hollow out. She was 21. She was wearing a yellow dress she'd bought herself. Her hair was the longest it had ever been. She stayed at the party for 3 more hours and had a genuinely lovely time. 3 weeks later, she was lying on her bed scrolling through her mother's WhatsApp status, out of habit, the complicated habit of keeping tabs on someone who makes you anxious, and she stopped. She sat up. She looked at the screen. Her mother was in the status photo, turned slightly to the side, caught in good light. The hair was out, thick, dark coils, parted the same way, falling at the front the same way, styled with what was clearly considerable effort. Zara stared at the photo for a long time. She thought about the bathroom floor, the razor. You don't need all this hair. She thought about the party. She doesn't look that good. She looked at her mother's hair in that photo, her own hair, worn by the woman who had taken it from her, and she felt something move through her that she couldn't quite name. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something quieter and stranger than both of those. Something that felt almost like understanding, almost like grief. She put her phone down on the mattress and looked up at the ceiling. Then slowly, she laughed. A small laugh, then a bigger one, the kind that surprises you on the way out, the kind that sits right next to crying without quite becoming it. Because here was the thing. Here was the thing her mother had spent 21 years refusing to say. She just spent 2 hours in a salon saying it instead. Zara got her first job at 22 through the particular miracle of having a grandmother who knew people. "I know someone," Grandma Chisum said on the phone, the tone of a woman reporting a decision already made. "Meridian Consulting, I've told them about you." "Grandma, I haven't even sent my CV." "I described you. That is better than a CV." The job was real. The work was real. Grandma Chisum's name opened the door, but Zara was the one who had to show up every morning and be competent, which she was, quietly and consistently in the way she did most things. She got a small apartment and furnished it slowly. A bed first, then a table, then curtains she spent 2 weeks choosing because they were her curtains and she could take as long as she wanted. The first time she sent her mother money, her friend Adiaze watched the entire process from across the table without saying anything for 4 minutes. "You're sending her money," Adiaze said. "I'm thinking about it." "You've been staring at that screen for 10 minutes. It's a big decision." Adiaze put her fork down. "Zara, this woman shaved your head. She's still my mother." Adiaze picked her fork back up. "Send it and log in this conversation for future reference." Zara sent the money. Delilah called the next morning. Her voice had a warmth to it that was unfamiliar, like furniture arranged in a room you knew well, the kind of warmth that arrived with the alert notification and left when the balance stopped coming. Zara knew this in the part of herself that had been paying attention since she was 7. She sent money the next month anyway, and the month after that. It is very hard to be analytical about wanting your mother. She met Austin at a seminar on a Tuesday in March. Their companies had been placed at adjacent tables during a group session, and she'd noticed him the way you notice something slightly brighter than everything around it. When their eyes met across the conference table, he didn't look away first. During the break, he leaned over and said, "I've been trying to figure out your firm. Your table is too quiet to be finance." "Meridian Consulting." That explains the composure. "What does your firm explain?" He smiled. "Probably the audacity." His name was Austin Obi. He worked in the same field, different company, and had a laugh that arrived without warning. They talked through lunch, exchanged numbers at the end of the day, and texted that evening with the energy of 2 people pretending they already looked forward to the next time. 3 months in, he suggested moving in together. "It makes sense financially," he said, which was practical enough to be reasonable, and also Zara had come to understand the way men who are slightly afraid of sincerity sometimes say, "I want to come home to you." She moved her things in stages, carefully, without announcement, making sure it still felt right at each step. It did. For a while, it really did. She decided to introduce him to her mother at 25, after a year of living together. She told Delilah ahead of time, full briefing, name, occupation, how they met. "Send me a photo." She sent one. 3 minutes passed. "He's handsome," Delilah said. Something in her voice sharpened without her noticing it. "Very handsome." "Thank you, Mommy. Give me his number in case I ever need to reach him as his mother-in-law." Nobody had mentioned marriage. Zara almost pointed this out and then decided it wasn't the hill. She gave her the number. The visit went fine. Austin was charming the way he was charming everywhere, and Delilah was warm and hospitable and had made food that clearly took hours. She laughed at Austin's jokes and asked considered questions about his career and touched her own hair twice while talking to him, which Zara noticed and then told herself she hadn't noticed. On the drive home, Austin said, "Your mom is cool." Zara said, "She was on good behavior. Aren't we all the first time?" Zara looked out at the passing streets. "Some of us more than others," she said, and left it there. The change came slowly enough that she questioned herself before she questioned him. Austin became quieter. Not absent. He still came to dinner, still existed in the apartment in all the ways that could be measured. But there was a quality to his presence that had shifted. The way a song changes when someone turns the volume down without telling you. She kept waiting to catch up to what she'd missed. "Are you okay?" she asked one Wednesday evening. He was on the couch scrolling his phone. "Fine," he said. "You seem—" "I said I'm fine, Zara." Not unkind, just sealed. She went to bed. She lay on her side, facing the wall, and went through every reasonable explanation she could find. Work, family, something she didn't know yet. People went through things. Relationships had weather. She told herself this for 3 weeks. Then, Austin came home on a Friday and said he had a business trip. 2 weeks, conference, out of town. Which conference? She asked pleasantly. A bit, slightly too long. Industry Strategy Summit, new thing this year. Okay, she said. She went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water and drank it slowly. She worked in the same industry. She knew the calendar. There was no conference. That same evening, her mother called to say she would be unavailable for a few weeks, a friend's burial, a village trip. Travel safe, Mommy, Zara said. She hung up. She stood in the kitchen a moment longer. She thought about her mother's voice on the phone. He is handsome, very handsome, the way it had sharpened without meaning to show it. Then she put her glass down and went to find a small mirror she could move behind Austin's chair. Austin had a specific armchair by the window. His chair, claimed without announcement, the way men claim things, by simply sitting in it repeatedly until it becomes a fact. He sat in it every evening without thinking about it, which was exactly the problem and also exactly the point. She moved the mirror on a Saturday while he was in the shower, hung a trailing plant in front of it so it looked like the kind of thing that had always been there, the kind of addition men don't register because it is decorative and therefore invisible to them. She got the password the following Sunday. She watched his reflection in the mirror while he typed, quick and automatic, the way people enter passwords they've never had to hide. She waited. She cooked. She poured wine. She sat with him through the evening, laughed at something on TV, let the night wind down the way it normally did. When his breathing settled into sleep, she got up and took the phone. She sat in the kitchen with the screen brightness low and opened the messages. She found her mother's contact immediately. She read slowly and without skipping because she understood, somewhere, that she would only be able to do this once and she should do it properly. The first messages were ordinary. Delilah introducing herself. How are you finding Lagos? The small talk of a woman establishing a line. Then, I honestly don't know what she sees in herself. She's always been difficult, very insecure. Her breathing stayed even. She kept reading. Her father left the moment I told him I was pregnant with her. She's never really known how to make someone want to stay. A pause in the thread, then Austin's reply, and this one landed differently because it involved someone she had moved her things in stages for. I noticed something was off with her, like something was always missing. Her mother's response was immediate, a voice note she couldn't play. Then photos. Regular photos first, then other photos. Zara locked the phone and placed it face down on the counter. She sat in the kitchen in the dark for a while and didn't do anything. The apartment was quiet. Down the hall, Austin was asleep. She thought about being 7 years old in front of a mirror. Then she picked the phone back up and screenshotted everything thoroughly. She confronted Austin the next morning, early, no wine, while he was still slightly off balance from sleep. She put his phone on the table between them and watched his face. He looked at the phone. He looked at her. Something settled in his expression. Not guilt exactly, more like the tired relief of a man who had been waiting for something to end. He said, I was trying to figure out how to tell you. Zara looked at him. I kept waiting for the right moment. You were going to take my mother to Zanzibar, she said, quietly, completely, level. He said nothing. And you have never, sir, taken me anywhere. He opened his mouth. Don't, she said. She went to the bedroom and packed what she needed for tonight. Not everything. She would come back for the rest, just enough to leave properly. At the door, she paused. There is no industry summit, sir. I work in the same field. I know the calendar. She heard him exhale slowly. I hope Zanzibar is nice. She closed the door behind her. She called her mother from the car. She had considered going silent, blocking without a word, depriving both of them of her reaction. But there was a part of her, the part that sat on a bathroom stool at 8 years old and kept her back straight, that needed to say something first. Delilah answered on the third ring. Zara? I know, Zara said. Silence. I read everything. A pause. And then Delilah did something that Zara would turn over in her mind for a long time afterward. She didn't apologize. She didn't backpedal. She laughed, a short, thin sound, and said, "Good, now you know how I felt when your father left me because I was pregnant with you." Zara sat with the phone pressed to her ear and let the words settle. She looked at them clearly without flinching. She thought about a 16-year-old girl, abandoned, who had looked at her own daughter for 25 years and seen the face of everything she'd lost, who chose in the end to hand the pain to the one person who'd never asked for it. "Goodbye, Mommy," Zara said. She blocked 2 numbers, one after the other. Then she sat in the parked car and cried, properly, without trying to manage it. And when it was over, she called Adiazi. "I need somewhere to stay tonight." "I'll put the kettle on," Adiazi said, without asking a single question. They still went to Zanzibar. A week later, her mother's status showed beaches and cocktails, and Austin's arm around her shoulders in golden hour light. Zara saw it because she had forgotten to mute the account before blocking, a small oversight she fixed immediately. She told Adiazi and Chiamaka that evening. There was a silence. "Your mother," Chiamaka said carefully, "went to Zanzibar?" "Yes." "With your boyfriend?" "Yes." "And posted sunset photos?" "He was wearing the shirt I bought him." Another silence. "Okay," Adiaze said. "What do we need? Food? Wine? I will fight someone. I want to be clear. That option is on the table." "Food," Zara said, "and just sit with me for a while." "Done," Chamaka said. "I'm also noting for the record that in any other universe, this situation results in consequences." Zara laughed. It surprised her, the laugh arriving before she expected it. She was sitting on Agiaze's couch with her feet tucked under her, the city loud outside the window, her 2 best friends on either side of her ordering food and being magnificently, reliably there. The grief was real. She wasn't pretending otherwise. It was the layered grief of losing a man she had trusted and a mother she had spent her whole life trying to reach, both at once, both long coming. But she was not alone, and that, she was learning, made more difference than she had words for.
Well, before the story comes to an end, do tell me where you are watching from. I love to see how far these beautiful stories travel. Enjoy! The 1-bedroom apartment Zara found was small enough that she could hear the neighbor's TV through the left wall and the neighbor's arguments through the right. She took it anyway. It was hers. She signed the lease on a Thursday afternoon and sat on the empty floor that evening with a container of Adaize's jollof rice and felt, underneath everything, a steadiness she hadn't expected. She called Grandma Chisum that night. "I ended things with Austin," she said. She had decided, on the drive over, to lead with that and leave everything else for later. Some things needed to be said in stages. Grandma Chisum was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay?" "I'm getting there." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you eating?" "Adaize's jollof." "Good." A pause. "Then the rest can wait until you're ready." She didn't tell her grandmother the full story that night. She told her over 3 separate phone calls across 2 weeks, in the careful way you tell someone something that will hurt them on your behalf. Grandma Chisum listened to all of it without interrupting, which for a woman of her personality was an act of considerable discipline. When Zara finished, there was a long silence. "Your mother," Grandma Chisum said, finally, in the tone of a woman choosing her words with the precision of someone who knew exactly which ones she wanted to use, but was deciding, for now, not to, "has always been her own worst problem." "I know," Zara said. "That doesn't make it hurt less." "I know that too." The grief came in inconvenient waves, which is the only way grief knows how to come. It arrived on a Sunday morning when she saw a dress in a shop window and thought Austin would like this before she remembered, and had to stand on the pavement for a moment recalibrating. It arrived when she was at the office and someone mentioned a team trip to Abuja and she thought briefly, "I should tell," and then didn't finish the thought. It arrived at odd hours in small ambushes, and she let it come and let it pass and did not make too much of it. The grief about her mother was different, older. It didn't arrive in waves because it had never fully left. It was more like a bruise she'd learned to move around, pressing it occasionally by accident, registering the pain, adjusting. What was new was the absence of hope, and the absence of hope she found was both worse and cleaner than she expected. Worse because hope, even damaged hope is still warmth, cleaner because you stop bracing for things that aren't coming. She told her therapist this on a Wednesday evening. That's a very mature way to frame it, her therapist said. I've had 25 years of material, Zara said. Adaize and Chiamaka instituted what they called, without any irony, the recovery program. It involved primarily food and noise, dinners at Chiamaka's apartment where everyone talked over each other and nobody asked Zara how she was feeling more than once per evening, which was the correct frequency. Occasional outings that Adaize organized with the logistical energy of someone who had missed their calling in event planning. One very ill-advised karaoke night that Zara had resisted and then, by the second song, stopped resisting. You're going to be fine, Chiamaka said, matter-of-factly, the way she said most things. They were on Adaize's balcony, the city lit up and loud below them. I know, Zara said. I'm not asking, I'm telling you. I said I know, Chiamaka. Good, because you looked like you needed to hear it stated as a fact rather than a possibility. Zara looked out at the city. When did you get wise? I've always been wise. You've been distracted.
A year passed. Not quickly. It passed the way years do when you're actually living them, day by day, with ordinary work and ordinary evenings, and the slow accumulation of a life that belongs entirely to you. She redecorated the apartment. She went natural with her skincare. She took a solo trip to Accra for 4 days, which Adaize called reckless and which turned out to be exactly what she needed. The specific freedom of being somewhere new where nobody knew her name or her story. She was good at her job and got better. She was promoted in the spring, which she celebrated by calling Grandma Chisum first and going to dinner with her friends second, in that order, because some rankings are non-negotiable. She did not think about Austin often. When she did, it was with a detached curiosity of someone examining an old photograph, recognizing the people in it without feeling located inside it anymore. He had not contacted her. She had not expected him to. She thought about her mother more than she wanted to. Not with longing exactly, more with the complicated, ongoing work of understanding something that would never fully resolve. She had read enough and talked enough in therapy to know that Delilah was a woman who had been broken at 16 and had never found a way to mend herself that didn't involve pressing the brake into everyone nearby. Knowing this did not fix anything, but it gave the story a shape. And shapes, she found, were easier to carry than formless things. Then, on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday, Chiamaka forwarded her something. It was a screenshot from someone's Instagram, Delilah in a hospital photo, soft lighting, the particular exhausted brightness of a woman who had just given birth. Beside her, Austin. In his arms, a baby. A boy. The caption said the name. Zara didn't read the name. She sat with the phone in her hand for a moment. She thought, she's done this before. She knows how this part goes. She put the phone face down, finished the report she'd been writing, sent it to her manager, and then went to the bathroom and stood at the sink and ran cold water over her wrists, the way you do when you need to bring yourself back to the present tense. She called Grandma Chisum. I heard, her grandmother said before Zara had spoken. News travels. I'm an old woman with a large family. News doesn't travel. It arrives personally and sits down. Zara almost laughed. How do you feel about it? How do you feel? I asked first. Grandma Chisum sighed, the sigh of a woman in her 70s who outlasted several people's bad decisions. I feel, she said slowly, that your mother has spent her whole life running toward the wrong things and calling it moving forward. I feel that baby did nothing to deserve what he's being born into. And I feel that you, my darling, are free of something that was never yours to carry. A pause. That's how I feel. Zara nodded at the wall. I think I'm okay. I think you are too. It just stings still. It will for a while, then less, then barely. That's how it goes. She met Korede at Chiamaka's birthday dinner, which she almost skipped because it was a Friday and she was tired and she had a full weekend of doing nothing planned and was looking forward to it. You're coming, Chiamaka said on the phone in the voice that did not leave room for a different answer. I'm tired, Chiamaka. Fine. He was a friend of Chiamaka's cousin, quiet in a room full of loud people, which she noticed because she understood that particular skill. He had the kind of face that took a second look to fully appreciate, and opinions about things that turned out, when she tested them, to be genuinely his own and not just the ones that sounded correct in company. He asked for her number at the end of the night without making a production of it. He'd like to take you for coffee sometime, if you'd like that. I might, she said. He smiled. I'll take it. She was careful with him in the way that people are careful when they've learned specifically and thoroughly what carelessness costs. On their third date, she told him, without planning to, more than she had intended. They'd been talking about families, the regular, circling way you talk about families in early dating, testing the edges, and something in the way he listened made her say more than she meant to. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. That's a lot to have carried, he said. Not I'm sorry, though he'd said that too, but that. That's a lot to have carried. As if he understood that the weight was the thing, not just the story. I'm mostly okay, she said. Mostly is honest, he said. I'll take mostly. She looked at him across the table. I should tell you, she said, that I'm going to be insecure sometimes. I'm working on it, but I want to tell you up front rather than pretend otherwise. He nodded slowly, like she'd said something that made sense and he was filing it in the correct place. I appreciate that, he said. I'll try to make it easy to tell me when it's happening. She hadn't expected that answer. She'd been breaching slightly for reassurance, the big performative kind that people offer when they want to close a subject. What she got instead was something quieter and more useful. She drove home that evening with the radio low and the window cracked, the city moving past her, and felt something she didn't immediately name. She let it sit for a while. She let it be what it was. He was, as it turned out, good at the small things. Not perfectly. He was occasionally oblivious about practical things in the way that required patient explaining and a second patient explaining, but good in the ways that counted. He paid attention. He remembered things she'd mentioned once in passing. He did not make her feel like a problem to be managed or a mood to be navigated around. When something was wrong, he asked directly, without theater, and when she told him, he didn't make it about himself. You keep waiting, he said one evening, not unkindly. They were cooking, his idea, an experiment that had gone moderately well, and she was quiet in a way he'd apparently been watching. For what? She said. For something to go wrong, he said it simply, stirring the pot. I notice it sometimes, like you're reading the small print. She didn't answer immediately. Old habit, she said. He nodded, kept staring. I know, I'm not telling you to stop. I just want you to know that I see it, and I'm not going anywhere. He glanced at her. You can keep reading the small print, I'll just keep making sure it says the same thing. She looked at him for a moment. That was annoyingly well said, she told him. I prepared it. I'm not going to pretend that came out of nowhere. Zara laughed, a real one, sudden and surprised. And the kitchen was warm and smelled like something they'd made together, and through the window the evening was settling into dark. She called Mama Chisum on his Sunday, the way she always did. Tell me about this young man, her grandmother said. She had been asking with increasing directness for 3 months. He's good, Zara said. Good how? Just good, Grandma. He's patient, he's present. He makes me feel like I'm not too much. A pause. You are never too much, Grandma said. You are just in the wrong rooms. Zara sat with that for a moment. I know that now, she said. Good. A pause. Bring him to Sunday lunch. Let me describe him. Let me see if I agree with myself. That's not how describing people works. Bring him, Zara. Fine. She looked in the mirror in a Saturday morning, unhurriedly, without bracing, and saw a woman who had, at various points, been told she was too much, not enough, not pretty, not worth staying for. Her hair was out, her edges were done. She was wearing a dress she'd bought herself because she liked the color, not because anyone had told her she should. She was 26 years old and she was, largely, okay. Not healed, she understood now that healed was not quite the right word, that some things don't close so much as scar over and become part of the terrain. But okay, present, has. She thought briefly of her mother, not with anger, the anger had burned down to something smaller and less sharp, not with longing anymore, or not the same longing, more with the particular sadness you feel for a story that didn't have to go the way it went, for a woman who had received a wound and spent 25 years making sure nobody in her vicinity healed from theirs. She hoped distantly that the baby was okay. She hoped less distantly that Grandma Chisum was right, that she was free of something that was never yours to carry. She picked up her keys. She was meeting Korede for breakfast and they were going to do something unremarkable in the afternoon, and she was looking forward to it in the quiet, settled way she was learning to look forward to things. She took one more look in the mirror. Then she left. If you had been in Zara's situation, what would you have done? If you had a friend that went through this, what would you have advised them to do? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share because these amazing stories deserve to be shared. I'll see you on the next one.